Welcome everybody. Welcome. Hey everyone. Give us a big wave. Great to see you all.
All
Fantastic.
right, got some people popping in. I'm curious where everybody's coming in from right now. If you feel like it, if you want to type into the chat where you are right now. For example, I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I've been here for about the past 6 months. Logan, are you, you're somewhere in New Zealand?
Somewhere in New Zealand. We always have a good laugh. Where in New Zealand are you right now? So I'm based in New Zealand at the moment. Now we've just got more and more people joining in. So just as you're joining, yeah, as Kat said, fire and where you are.
Oh, wow, we're all over the place. Got Australia, Toronto, French Alps, Portland, a lot of Americans in here. Missouri, I used to live in Missouri. That's great. Oh, and someone else in Mexico, Laura, nice.
I love it.
Florida.
Bonus points to Meryl. French Alps, we know it's very late for you. I know there's a few people in here that have come in from Europe. We really appreciate you joining in. We know that the call time's very late for you. So love it, team. Hey, so what we're going to do, obviously there's probably a few more people joining over the next minute or so, but we are going to get underway. Now, we're super excited to have you here. Look, this is something that we don't do too many of these live Zoom calls, but Kat and I love to do them because it's a really great opportunity for us to connect with all of you and get to understand what people are doing, what their needs are, and also share some wisdom along the way as well. Sort of the second half of the call, we are going to be getting people to ask their questions live. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of questions that people have already asked us online by email and Instagram, but people can be putting questions in the chat. This call is being recorded as well, so there's a few people, particularly throughout Europe, who couldn't make this call, and there's a few other people around the world as well who have said, we would love to attend, but we've got something on. So it is recorded, so we'll make sure we send this out to you all as well. Obviously, we encourage you to take notes as we go through this as well, like gems. We're looking for gems for your business to take your ideas forward. And there'll be lots of questions here that are relevant for you in different ways. So really encouraging you to learn from other people's questions that they've got as well as we go through. Cool. So, and then tell us about how we're going to run the chat, Kat.
Yeah, so again, like Logan mentioned, the second half of this call is all going to be Q&A. So we're going to start that by going through some of the questions that were already submitted. But if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and pop those in the chat at any time throughout the call. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, we're just going to scroll back up to the top and start with the first question. So yeah, feel free throughout the call. If you have any questions, if one of us is mentioning something and you want to hear a bit more about it, you can just ask us to elaborate a little bit more, just kind of pop those questions in as we go. And then, yeah, once we get to the end, again, like Logan said, you can read them out loud and ask the question yourself, or we could read it for you, either one. So throughout this call, feel free to pop in any questions you guys have.
Fantastic. So we might start off with some introductions. So Kat, do you want to just give us a bit of an overview about yourself, and then I'll share about myself too.
Sure thing. So my name is Kat Cocolette, and my company name is Kat Coke. So I'm a surface designer, digital nomad, and a Skillshare teacher. So I'm doing a lot of different things. I'm doing education, I'm doing art licensing, and we're also doing retreats. So Logan and I actually have a retreat coming up in France at the end of this summer for creative entrepreneurs to talk about their businesses, and we'll be painting watercolor every day as well. So I started out as a graphic designer straight out of college back in Kansas City. And I worked at a branding agency for about 4 years, but on the side, I was dabbling in art and trying to find a way to make this my business. So I got started with print-on-demand websites like Society6 and Redbubble, and over time that progressed into something much larger where I'm still working with those original print-on-demand companies, but now I also license my artwork in store through brands like Urban Outfitters, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond. A lot of the reason why I got to this place was just by persistence in business and networking and really following through with that passion I have for making a living through art licensing. And on the teaching side, I started teaching about 4 years ago through a platform called Skillshare. And I'm actually just working now on my 20th class, which is going to be launching soon. So On Skillshare, I teach classes about art skills. You can learn how to watercolor, paint with acrylics. And then I also teach creative entrepreneur classes. So how to make a name for yourself on Instagram, or what's the best way to use social media marketing for your business, or even how to get involved with art licensing. So yeah, basically my classes are everything that I wish I would have known when I was getting started, are all pretty much concise through my Skillshare offering. And right now I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I've been here for about 6 months. I live as a digital nomad, so I don't have a permanent home anywhere. I hop from country to country and live and work in new places all the time. And I actually met Logan in Italy a few years ago when he was hosting an entrepreneur retreat, and I signed up for it on a whim. And fast forward to now, I think Logan, I think we're 5 country friends. We've been to Italy together. I saw him in Thailand a few years ago, Indonesia, the USA, and then I also went to New Zealand last year for a retreat he was hosting. So all over the world together.
Fantastic. I love it, Kat. Thank you so much for sharing. So look, it's so amazing seeing all the people from around the world, right? And I know all of you are connected to myself or Kat in different ways, but it just shows the power of online, right? We can do so much online, and both Kat and I very much have our businesses focused online because we also both travel as well. And we know that there's some people in the audience who do the same, or you really want to have a bit more freedom in what you're doing. So I'll give it just sort of a brief overview about myself as well. Look, as Kat mentioned, we do run retreats. So that's part of what I do, is running a retreat. So I'll sort of come back to that. But look, in an essence, I'm super passionate about creative entrepreneurship. So I have a creative business myself. It's an entertainment company, started in 2010. It's called Highly Flammable, and it's an entertainment company here in New Zealand. These days, I don't spend that much time on the company. I have a team that run that. Because over the last sort of 5 years, I've become more and more passionate about teaching entrepreneurship. So I've worked with universities, run programs around the world, and also here in New Zealand, to help people, creatives, with building their businesses. And often I see myself as someone that bridges the gap between business and creative, and that sort of artistic world. And in terms of how I do that these days, mostly I do it via working with people one-on-one online, or running group programs like the Accelerator, which we'll share a little bit more about. And then as well as that, I occasionally do some in-person teaching, which I love, mostly here in New Zealand. It's always great with big classrooms, sometimes at the universities or public programs as well. And then, yeah, and look, finally, my original background was, interestingly, I studied science for 4 years because I was interested in the world of science. And then I wanted to learn more about business. So I did an entrepreneurship master's, and it was during that I really turned my creative hobby into a business. So I've sort of dabbled in a lot of different worlds and chased different passions over the years. And then, as Kat mentioned, we actually originally met, I think we actually originally met in Thailand, and then Kat attended the volcano retreat I was running in Italy. So I've got a brand called the Volcano Retreats, where we bring together creative entrepreneurs from around the world. And then more recently, Kat and I decided, let's run some retreats together. So the first one is the France retreat, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. That is happening at the end of August. Actually, I will post the link in the chat just now, so you've got that there if it's something you're interested in. I know we've still got a few spots left as well, which is great. Look, obviously, the France retreat is something that it's a funny time at the moment. That's why we made sure when we partnered with our retreat partners that it was fully COVID refundable, but we're remaining pretty positive that it is going to happen as well, which is great. So what we're going to be doing from here in the call is we're going to spend a little bit of time just sharing more about the Creative Business Accelerator. This is a program that is starting in a couple of weeks, and we really wanted to basically spend some time sharing what that looks like with you. And then afterwards, we're going to really jump into Q&A, and it can be questions about about the accelerator, it could be about the retreat, or it could be general business questions. So we've already had a whole bunch of questions that people have sent in saying, hey, I want to understand this about business, which we love. So we're really going to dedicate probably about 15 minutes or so talking about the accelerator, and then we're going to jump into Q&A from there. Really, getting you some support and steps forward within your business during this time we have together. Within that. So shall we share a bit more about the accelerator, Kat?
Let's do it. You want to go ahead and dive in with what the accelerator is and maybe kind of outline week by week how it works?
Awesome. I love that. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to aim to basically just spend about 1 to 2 minutes per week just sharing that with you. So really it's giving you an overview. And from each of these things, just think about what you need in your business as well. And maybe there's some good tips along the way here, as well as seeing if the Creative Business Accelerator is something for you. So look, week one, as I said, it starts on the 3rd of May. And runs for 8 weeks. So it is an 8-week online accelerator. It has live workshops every single week. So we have a 90-minute live workshop that I'm running every week. And Kat is co-running 2 of those workshops as well. So she's going to share those elements too. In addition to that, we have some other calls. We have a really cool thing called Virtual Cuppa, where you get to connect with the other business owners who are on the accelerator too. And then there's a community element. We link you up with an accountability buddy. We obviously have an online community element as well, and then sharing mindset videos and some other things too. So look, in week 1 of the Creative Business Accelerator, we do needs and goals. So often what we see in business is that people aren't clear enough about what they want to achieve, what it is they actually need, and obviously what the plans are moving forward. So we actually work through a really great week on that. Part of it sometimes helping people come up with plans to transition from, maybe it's a day job or from another business or from doing something else as well. Could be study or having some time off. And that's something we really deep dive into, and people get a lot of clarity about what they want to achieve from that session. Heading into week 2, it's all about business fundamentals. And it's easy to forget that when you run a creative business, there is an important business element. And what I really do during that time is we deep dive into the key business fundamentals you need to know to really make your business successful. It's designed for people who are just starting out or people who are further along as well. So often we've got people in the accelerator who are within kind of the first couple of years. On the last one, I know we had a bunch of people just starting out, trying to figure things out. And then we had a bunch of people that were a few years along. So part of it for the business fundamentals for the people further along is helping them see what they're missing, what things they need to put in place that they haven't yet. So everything from looking at their HR, their insurance, their business admin side, what are the other things they need to put in place around the numbers and the financials. Those things are really important, and it can be really tough to do them, especially as a creative. It's not necessarily at the top of the list to do those things. So I really support and encourage you around that as well. Now, moving into week 3 is basically about your products and services. And what I often see is that people have some clarity around what they're doing, but there's often elements missing. So I talk a lot about what are those small offers you can have. What is the bread and butter? So the bread and butter is like the thing you do again and again and again, something that's easy enough to sell, easy enough to deliver, and you can basically kind of wake up and do that thing and sell that thing relatively easily. And then we talk a lot about premium offers as well. And my belief is that everyone at any level should have a premium offer. So we really help you to craft those ideas and work out what you're already doing and to have that focus as well. Because often people can get, oh my God, there's all these different options and different ways that you can earn and create a business, but it can be quite overwhelming. So we help you to actually really focus down and go, which products and services make the most sense? Which are you going to focus on now? And then which are you going to focus on moving forward? Week 4 is actually all about the numbers. And I know some of you are probably like, oh no, the numbers, the accounting, the finance, that stuff, Logan, no. And actually, it's always funny because I often get feedback from this part of the course saying, Logan, I thought that's the bit I'd hate the most, and it's the bit that I actually enjoyed the most, which is always interesting because yes, we do it in a fun and interactive way. We really help people to work out what the number elements, what are the numbers you need to know? Like, do you know what variable and fixed costs are? What are the costs that you need to understand in your business? How can you create a financial plan and projections moving forward? So I've basically worked with a lot of creatives in this space, and over the years have developed an amazing template that we use. So it's kind of like easy to plug and play with the different numbers and build your business model for the future as well. And as I said, we always have a bit of fun on that session. It's not as dry and as scary as it sounds. The numbers part is something that personally at university, I hated that stuff. But then when I had a real business and I found the relevance in it, I was like, wow, this is absolutely fascinating and super interesting because it represented my business as well. Heading into week 5, pricing. And pricing is probably one of my favorite subjects to teach. It's called the Pricing Masterclass. And I basically run a 90-minute live session all about pricing your business, pricing your products and services. Often there's things that you haven't thought about. And there's some really great quotes out there. And one of them basically says, if you don't price right, you're either damaging your profits or your reputation. Okay. And there's a lot to think about around pricing. And sometimes I see that people are pricing too low because they think they need to price low so people will buy from them. But actually, people are viewing their products as cheap and low quality, so they don't purchase. Okay, so sometimes actually it's about getting a higher price and getting that right and finding the right market that find that price valuable to them. So look, there's a whole lot in pricing, and it's something I'm super passionate about as well, within helping people, because it can make a massive difference to the future of your business. Even just changing your pricing model, the strategy around that, even based on the products and services you physically have available now. Cool. So next up, we're going to focus and head into week 6, which Kat is co-hosting. So she's even got a few slides she's going to share with you for week 6 as well. So here we go to Kat.
All right. Can everybody see my screen? I guess, Logan, you're the only, okay, thumbs up. Cool. All right. So week 6 is where I come into play, and I'll be co-hosting with Logan. And so this is one of my levels of expertise, which is social media deep dive. So we're going to go into all the platforms. We'll talk a little bit about Instagram, about Pinterest, about Facebook, Clubhouse, and then try to find which social media platforms are best for you. So for example, my primary platform is Instagram. So I find the most success there, but maybe for you, it might be something else. Maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's Clubhouse. We'll kind of talk about pros and cons of different platforms and find ones that may align with your brand best. So real quick, I'm just going to give an example of the types of things that I'll be talking about in the workshop. And a lot of it has to do with social media strategy. So I'm going to give you a quick example right now by doing a breakdown of what a perfect bio looks like, in my opinion. So right now, this is on Instagram. So the number one thing that everybody should have on their Instagram bios is explain who you are and what you do. Always have your name listed. There's a lot of times where someone might comment on my artwork and I want to thank them and use their name, but I go to their bio and sometimes it's not listed. So always have your name listed and what it is that you're actually doing. Use keywords to target into your niche. So I use words like artist, entrepreneur, and educator in mind because that's who I want to attract with my Instagram presence. Any opportunities you have to link to your website, your blog, whatever it is. For me personally, I use Linktree, which allows me to put a lot of active links in there, since through my Instagram posts, I usually have several different calls to action throughout the week. And using a platform like Linktree or any sort of link management program allows you to pepper in a lot of different links. So have some sort of call to action with a clickable link because you can put that in your bio pretty easily. Any opportunity you have to infuse aspects of your personality are always good to do. So for me, I do that through my tagged stories. So I kind of have these collections of stories at the bottom here. You can learn about my art, you can learn about who I am, and that gives people a quick snapshot about who I am as an artist and a person. Contact info. I probably should have listed this as number 1 because it's the most important. Always, always, always have a way for someone to get in touch with you. So I've actually landed licensing gigs because I have my email listed on my Instagram page. So actually Urban Outfitters was one. They saw me on Instagram, and because my email has a little nice handy button there that's listed, they were able to send me a direct email about licensing my first piece of artwork through their stores. Some sort of strategic profile pic. So for me, I choose to use the logo of my business because first and foremost, my Instagram presence is a brand, not myself. I know other artists that maybe they choose their most popular or most notable piece of artwork and that's what they use as their bio. Other artists use professional headshots. These are all great ideas, but some sort of strategic profile pic that alludes to who your brand is. That's just a quick little deep dive. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and go back to Logan.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much, Kat. Look, those 2 weeks that Kat's involved in, we have an absolute blast working together. It's something that when we first actually met on the volcano, or sort of got to know each other more on the volcano a number of years ago, I think I identified pretty quickly. I was like, oh man, like we have to do some stuff together. I remember we were like sitting down in this cafe, Kat, and we had this like catch up for like, I think we went for like several hours, and we were just like, okay, oh my God, this. And I think in business, it's so important to find those people that you can collaborate with as well. And I know some of you do have people you collaborate with, but it's something to work out moving forward what that could look like. So, Kat's talked about, these different types of partnerships that can be involved. They could be with other business owners as well. Just like Kat and I are doing. We have separate businesses, we have separate brands, but we're collaborating on various things, including the France retreat. And obviously I'm getting Kat involved in the accelerator too, which can really help. Hey, look, moving into week 8, the final week of the Creative Business Accelerator. At this point, everyone on the program is like best friends, which is amazing. It's so cool seeing everyone supporting each other. And that's a big part of the program, is that community element of support. Those are the people that will support you beyond there. And I know from the last program we ran in December, January, a lot of people are still talking. So the accountability buddies are still connecting. Some of them are still having fortnightly calls, which is really amazing as well, supporting each other. And I've been able to keep in touch with everyone as well, which I've really enjoyed, seeing them on the journeys and being able to celebrate the steps that they've taken. Several people have left their jobs and gone full-time in their businesses since the accelerator and things like that. So as I said, week 8, everyone's best friends, which we love. Week 8 is the final week of the accelerator, and it's when we focus on marketing and sales. So look, marketing is something that kind of flows throughout the whole course, but we then have a whole week dedicated to that. And we really jump into helping people work through ways that can work for them. Okay, marketing strategies that they can use, and then getting into the sales strategies as well. Because actually marketing and sales is something that a lot of people really struggle with. They find really hard, they kind of avoid it. So part of it is creating strategies that work for you. And sometimes it's just about upskilling, right? Learning some strategies, learning some skills, and actually gaining some knowledge around what you can do, because it does make a difference. These things do make a difference in your business. Often what we're seeing is that people are, yes, they're amazing with their creative skills. We love that. And what I'm seeing is amazing quality out there of the work that's been done. But often people are going, if they're struggling to sell or they're not selling that much, they go, oh, it's because I'm not good enough as a creative. They then often lean into those skills. Sometimes they need to improve skills, and I believe skills are a lifelong learning, that we need to improve our creative skills. But often it's actually the marketing and the sales that's holding them back, as well as other things we've talked about, like pricing and making sure they've got the right products and services available as well. So look, it can be a really interesting area. And once again, we make sure we have plenty of fun during that. So that has given you a really brief overview of it. I really encourage you to check out the site as well. So we will post it in the comments. We've just created a really amazing video about the program as well, which I had a lot of fun creating, which was great. So this is a program that we've had a lot of great feedback from, and do post any questions in the chat around that if you want to learn more, or you can contact through the website as well. But there is a page dedicated to it. And just finally, I'll just kind of add a couple of wrap-up notes, and then we are going to jump into Q&A as well. So I'll just add into the chat. There we go. Here goes the link, so you can pull that and have a look, and have a look after as well. The program is something that really has people go on here at now. I mean, accelerate is why we call it accelerate. Okay, and if you think about what you have achieved, say, over the last few months, you can, okay, how I achieve even more over the next few months. And one of those ways is through joining a creative program like this, which helps you to upgrade those skills as a creative, but as a business owner as well, which can be really powerful. So it's always amazing seeing the amount of action that's taken during this course as well. So we really enjoy being able to actually support people to take those next steps within a few months. And as I said, we've seen some amazing things come out of it, people taking great steps forward. We often have a lot of people who are making more sales during the accelerator and afterwards as well, which we love seeing that feedback. And then of course we get some great wins, like people leaving their day job. That's amazing. We've seen that happen quite a few times, which we love too as well. So do check that out. Look, places for it will close next week, at the end of next week. As I said, it starts on the 3rd of May. So if it's something you're considering doing, have a good look. There is basically 3 versions. You can do the normal version, which is basically the 8-week calls. And then you can also have add-ons. So there's another, basically a couple of premium versions. We can add on a one-on-one call with me, or 6 one-on-one calls as well. So I definitely encourage you to consider them. We do have quite a lot of people that you do kind of either of those bonus extra options as well as the sort of the basic package too. So cool, awesome. All right, Kat, I think we might have to jump into questions. What do we reckon?
Oh, I love it. Let's do it. So there are a ton of awesome questions coming in through the chat. Thank you guys so much. Let's get to those in a bit, but first I'm going to start with some of the questions that were submitted early on through Instagram. So Aaron at Imprint Creative asked, what is one piece of advice you would tell your past self when you were just starting out? And I spent, most of the day kind of mulling this one over because I was like, God, there's so many pieces of advice. But ultimately, my biggest challenge when I was first getting started was imposter syndrome. I was working as a graphic designer and then an arts director at this agency, and I went to school just to do those things. And then all of a sudden I was thinking like, maybe I'll just end all of this and start being an artist. And it just sounded crazy, and I didn't believe in myself. And I had so many misgivings, which everybody has misgivings at the beginning, don't get me wrong. But even when I started seeing potential with what my side business was doing, I still was, a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger and pursue it full time. And that's my biggest regret, is not getting started earlier and not believing in myself when I should have. And one more, I know you only asked for my biggest challenge, but one more is I should have hired a CPA, which is someone that helps you with your taxes and your earnings, as soon as I saw potential in my earnings. So the first month that I saw Society 6 income hit $2,000, for example, and when I saw that was going to be a recurring thing or growing on top of that, I should have hired a CPA right from the beginning. I waited about 6 months, which wasn't the end of the world, but I did have a big surprise when taxes came around. And if I would have hired a CPA a little bit earlier, I might not have been so surprised by that. So hire a CPA and get over your imposter syndrome.
Awesome. Hey, we had another really good question, which was, how do you keep the faith and start your business without letting nagging doubt get in the way? And I love this question. I think it's so powerful. And I think it's something to recognize firstly, is like everyone gets this nagging doubt. All right. I know Kat's experience. I know I experience. I know all of the creative business owners who have been in business for years experience it and have experienced it at different times. So it can be, this doubt can be there. And there is a few things you can do about that. And I'm going to kind of go over a couple of them. Especially when you're starting out, it's really hard because you're not necessarily getting the feedback, right? Maybe you don't have a very big audience yet, right? So you feel like you're putting out these messages and you're like promoting yourself and you're like, I've got this website and I've got this Instagram page and I'm sending out these messages and I'm not getting a lot back. It's really important to recognize that is what can happen early on, and you need to build up that momentum. It takes time. You need to keep at it, okay? The key thing here is taking action, all right? And when you take consistent action, and I mean action every week, that's when you'll start to see the results. But it can take time, okay? So yes, you might have that doubt. Let the time roll on and keep taking that action, all right? And if you look at both my journey as well as Kat's journey, it's taken a long time. All right, it takes a long time to get places. Yes, you can see some great steps, and we've had some great growth from our journeys and people we've worked with and people we've seen. We've seen them take some really big steps at time as well, but it's all been based on action. And I keep coming back to that thing around action, especially during the course itself, because the most successful people I know are the biggest action takers. They're not the brightest people necessarily. They're not the people who actually necessarily have the best stuff. Yep, they've got good quality stuff, but it's not necessarily the world's best, but actually they're really good at taking action. Okay, so in terms of keeping the faith and keeping that momentum, especially early on, taking action every day, even if you're finding, oh my God, no one's liking what I'm doing, no one's engaging with what I'm doing, keep doing it, because in time they will. You'll build your audience and then you'll start to get more engagement and interaction as well. Awesome, Kat.
Logan, I love that so much. And you made such a good point. I am not successful because I'm the best artist out there. I am far from it. In fact, when I look at my class projects on Skillshare, like there are a lot of projects that they're way better than what I can even do. And it's really just motivational. It's just motivating. It's inspirational. But the reason why I found success is because of the steps I took to grow my brand and to try the shotgun approach. And when one print-on-demand company, Society6, was working well, I decided to shotgun approach it and work with as many print-on-demand companies as I could possibly find, because there was momentum there and I chased it. When I put together one Skillshare class and I saw that I had potential there with growing a following and with getting involved with online education, I decided to follow that momentum as well. So yeah, I think that's really, really powerful stuff. Okay, just wanted to mention that before I get to the next question.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Katie L. And she wants to know, how do you decide what to agree to in a contract? So yeah, for me, getting involved with contracts, it was a complete trial and error approach, because the first contract I ever reviewed, I wasn't a professional illustrator yet. I was still working at an agency. So I Googled it and tried to figure it out. And so I made a lot of mistakes then, and I'm still, you know, kind of finessing that, but I'm just going to give you a really quick overview for what I look for in a contract. The first thing I want to see is this exclusive or is it non-exclusive? So this means if I license my designs to this company, let's do Target, for example. Target wants exclusivity. So they want an exclusive contract, which means that if my designs are licensed through them, I can't license those same designs through anyone else. So if you're going to go the exclusive route, you need to define this. You need to define how long the contract lasts. And then you can also get even more narrow with it and make it be exclusive by that specific product. So with Target, even though I'm exclusive with, say, the Hamza hand that I painted, it's sold there as art prints, so I can't sell that as art prints anywhere else. But I can sell a slightly different color palette as art prints somewhere else. Or I can sell art prints in Europe because my exclusivity is only in the US. So you can really define what that exclusive means. And I know a lot of artists balk when they hear exclusive because they want to be able to sell their stuff elsewhere, which is totally understandable. So just know that you have some options there and you can get really, really specific with it. Another thing I look at is the royalty rate. And if they want an exclusive contract, then that's going to bump up that royalty rate. And I also look at it in advance. So if somebody wants me to create custom art for this specific licensing project, then which ModCloth asked me to do a few years ago, I was doing a bedding home decor selection with ModCloth, and they wanted custom artwork. So I agreed to it, but with royalties, but we were going to set up an advance first, which means they pay me a certain amount of money that's going to come out of my royalties later, but it's just a way to protect me in case absolutely nothing sells. I'll still have that advance that I can hold on to. Another thing that I put in every contract is I must review final products before they're live. And the reason I always want to have that in there is I want to see a mock-up of what that product looks like before it's on shelves or sold online. And that way I can make sure that the design is used correctly, and more importantly, that my signature or logo is always in place. So for every piece I ever license, my signature is always there so that people can find me, which is why my signature is so legible. I want people to be able to Google me later. And the last thing, I look for red flags. And the biggest possible red flag that could ever be in a licensing contract is a transfer of intellectual property or copyright. That should never, ever, ever happen. Unless you're designing a logo for someone and it's understood that then that company owns the logo, which for most logos, that's standard. For a piece of artwork, I will never transfer intellectual property or copyright, because even for exclusive contracts, I still own the copyright. I'm just dictating how it can be used for the specific licensing contract. So if anybody ever and I've seen contracts where people try to sneak that in, and I will never even work with that brand if they try to hide it in the contract. So it doesn't happen that often, but just be aware that as an artist or designer or any sort of content creator, even the classes I put on Skillshare, I own the rights to all of those things, and I will never sell the rights.
Yeah, awesome. So powerful, Kat. And look, I think it's just so powerful to like see your expertise from your experience. Like I think what can be really awesome in business is understanding that when people have been through that journey ahead of you, they've learned stuff the hard way, right? And that's a really powerful thing, that you can actually learn from those who have done things already. Yes, maybe they're on a different journey from you, but often there's relatable things as well. And we see that a lot, often the work that we do as well, which is great. Hey, the next question is actually a question I've got about the France retreat, which is why did we choose France for the France retreat, which is from Adam. I think this is a really good question. To be honest, it's kind of probably just a personal thing, is that both Cash and I have actually never been to France. Actually, I think I've been into Paris for like a day. And it's somewhere that actually we wanted to travel, right? We wanted to experience more of French culture, right? We both love to travel, and part of it was going, hey, we would be an awesome place that others would love to join us for that time, and basically run a retreat. And actually, France was a great opportunity. So we were really lucky to connect up with our retreat partners, Uptrek, for that opportunity as well. So we're really stoked to have them on board, because it actually means that we can do things like have, the refundable COVID setup as well. And of course, have a fantastic venue, have all the elements taken care of, amazing food, because actually we believe that the French retreat, so much of it is, yes, we'll be running workshops and different things that people will learn from us, but it's also about those informal conversations that you have with Kat and I, with other business owners, over a glass of wine or over some delicious food, right? And we believe it's those moments often is that when people get a lot of value and a lot of movement forward, and also build a really great connection community around them as well. Often what I'm seeing is that the people within the retreats that I've run over the years, they stay in touch. They stay in touch for years. Actually, I'm still part of some chats from retreats from years ago, that there's messages almost every week, which is amazing, seeing them ongoing, and people are supporting each other. So part of it is building that support community around you as well in your business. Cool.
All right, I love it. All right, so the next question is from Noviana Mona, and she asks, do you have any tips for people with an agent to be represented? And how did you get started working with an agent? So quick background, I signed on with an agency about 3 years ago, Jewel Branding and Licensing. And this agency now represents me and my artwork, which is great because they've been able to get my artwork out there and get more lines and wallpaper collections, things like that I was struggling to get on my own. So I personally have had really great experience with representation. So they've really helped me grow my licensing opportunities. But my ultimate advice for anyone is to go with your gut. So I've had a lot of agencies contact me about licensing, and this was the first one I actually pulled the trigger on because I'd done all my research. I knew they were a very reputable company, and I wanted to work with specifically a surface design art licensing agent. So if you're researching agents, just know that there's a lot of different types, even for artists. So the type of agent that I have is specifically for surface design, which means they can take old stuff from my portfolio that I painted 6 years ago and hasn't really seen the light of day, and they can find an opportunity to get that licensed and in store, which is great for me because that results in passive income. It's artwork that I've already created years ago that's just not being used anywhere else. And then I also create new artwork for my portfolio all the time, and I do this based off of, trend reports, what their clients are looking for, things like that. But in general, I've had a really, really good experience with an agent, but I also know artists who have not had good experiences, which is why I say go with your gut and make sure that the licensing company that you're talking to or considering working with specializes in what you're specifically interested in. So like I mentioned, mine is surface design, but I know other artists who have agents that help them with like campaigns, right? So maybe you're painting a mural at the Facebook headquarters. That's a completely different type of work than the stuff I want to be doing. I want to be earning passive income from the artwork that's in my portfolio and has been there for a while. But if you're wanting to work on maybe social media campaigns or do things that are just going to live for a certain brand, that's probably a different type of agency than the one I work with. And also know that if you're talking with an agent and getting to the phase where you're reviewing contracts, always, and I feel like this is boring because I'm talking about contracts on this whole call, but they're really important. My main piece of advice here is know that all contracts are negotiable. So even with my agency, Jewel Branding and Licensing, we went back and forth on that contract like 6 times. So if there's something that's not in that contract and you want it in there, you can always ask for it. And if there's something in there that you don't really like, you can always ask for it to be removed or ask for an adjustment, or just let them know like, hey, this makes me a little bit nervous. Like, what do you think moving forward? The way that I approached my contract with my licensors was completely different from the way I approached it with a brand. And that this is someone that I'm going to be working with, hopefully for the rest of my career. And so it's a team effort, right? So once we get that contract nailed down, we're working together as a team for hopefully the foreseeable future. And I just want to make sure that everything gets out in the open that I have any questions about ask as many questions as you can possibly think of, and don't think like, oh, is it naive to ask this question? Like, it's way better to ask the question than to leave that unanswered, because this is the time to do it if you're in any sort of conversation with a licensing agent. And also know that I built up my company for 4 years before I eventually signed on with an agency. And one of the reasons why I waited so long is because I wanted to wait till I was at a point where I had a lot of good brands behind my name, so I could negotiate for a better rate when I eventually decided to seek representation. So I wasn't necessarily beginner artist when I found an agent. I was already at a pretty intermediate level. So yeah, just things to consider.
I love that. Hey, what we're going to do soon is we're going to switch over to questions in the chat, just because we're aware of time. So I might answer one more question that we were asked before the call. And then Kat, I'll get you to start on the chat questions from there as well. But before we do that, what I really want to do is just get everyone to put in the chat, what is your business about? All right, so what sort of business do you have? We would love to know who is represented here. So just fire something in the chat. You could mention what products you have and things like that as well. But it's always interesting to see what people are doing. What are your focuses? Maybe that's what business you're planning to start if you're pre-start, or that you've been running as well. So just fire something into the chat there, because it's always super interesting seeing what people are doing. Business coach and digital planners/journals. Love that, Teresa. That's super awesome. Cool. So we're seeing lots of diversity in here. Surface designers, lettering artists, graphic designers, fashion designers. I love that. Sandra, that's awesome. Digital artists. Yep, lots of learning. Textiles, artists, consulting, surface designers, watercolor artists, illustration. Yep, multimedia. Look, there's so many different things that people are doing here. So keep adding them in as well if you haven't added it yet. It's always fascinating for us to see, and we really enjoy a lot of the clients I work with one-on-one and in the programs. Usually across all of these different things as well. We have a lot of surface designers on there, as well as graphic designers, illustrators, and there's always people with other interesting creative areas as well. We've had videographers and photographers as well, which is a lot of diversity, which is great. So the final sort of question we got before I'm going to answer is actually one about the accelerator itself. So someone asked and said, hey, wait a minute, how do the 90-minute calls work for people in different time zones? And I think that can be quite confusing, even just looking at here. It's like, wait a minute, Logan, you're in New Zealand, Kat's in the US. Like, what if I'm in Europe? What if I'm in the US, etc.? So the way that we designed it is that we do actually have 2 call streams. So that basically means that we have 2 of the same call every week that I repeat. Okay, so depending on which time zone you're in, it basically means that there's at least one time zone that will work for you, or in some time zones, there's actually 2. So look, all that information's on the website, but just to give you a sort of an idea of what that looks like, one of those call streams for US Central Time, I know you're not all in US Central Time, is 1:30 p.m. on Tuesdays. Okay, so every 1:30 p.m. on Tuesdays, we'll have one of those streams. And then the other option is 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Okay, and you might be, if you're in the US, you might be an hour or 2 either side of that, depending on where you are. But that kind of gives you an idea of those timings. Then for Europe, the call is at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday evening, or it's the middle of the night, 2 a.m., which I know probably won't work for most of you, but at least you've got that one option. And then for those Kiwis in the group, or Australians, the New Zealand time is 6:30 a.m., which is the time that I'll be teaching, of course. I get up at 5 a.m., so I love early calls. Some people think I'm crazy, but that's okay. And then the other call time is midday New Zealand time as well. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how that works. And often what happens is the class tends to be pretty split between those 2 call times as well. And some people change. They're like, oh, okay, one week I'm going to do the US one in the middle of the day, the other one next week they change the other one. So it's fully flexible around that as well. And all the calls are recorded, because people occasionally miss one. Look, it's technically not compulsory. We really want you to attend all the calls or watch the recordings if you can't make it, but life happens. People have other things that can pop up. So look, the majority of people on the course come to all the calls. The odd people miss 1 or 2, and they watch the recording as well within that. So look, always interesting seeing that diversity in terms of where people come from across the world. I think on the last accelerator, we had about 9 or 10 countries represented, which we love. So cool. Awesome, Kat. Should we jump into the chat?
Let's do it. All right, so I'm looking at this question from Wendy Butcher, and she wants to know, have you had stage fright in front of a camera, and how did you get over it? So the first time I ever Logan is laughing because he knows this story. The first time I ever recorded a class, I flew to New York and met with the Skillshare team, and we filmed my class in their studios. And I'd never done anything like that before. And I was so nervous, I almost cried like the whole time. And like, if you watch that class, like it looks pretty good, but just know that behind the scenes, I'm just like, oh my God. Oh, it was really rough. But the reason I'm way better at it now is through practice. So it's one of those things where you'll get better at it as you go. And I look at the early classes that I did even with Skillshare, and the content, I stand by the content. It's really great, but there's a lot of issues with the video production. Like, I'm learning as I'm going. So with most things in life, especially with entrepreneurship, you don't have to wait until everything is perfect before you go for it, before you publish your design or launch your course or email your first potential clients. It's going to be a learning curve the entire way. So even though my first courses, I mean, every time I publish a course or I'm in front of the camera, I find something that I could improve upon the next time. And that's just how it goes. And I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I finish a piece of artwork or I publish a class and I'm like, okay, that's absolutely perfect. There's nothing I could do differently. There's always going to be something you can fix. And one of those things for me was stage fright of being in front of a camera and not crying. So there's hope for everyone.
I love that, Kat. Look, I think that's probably a subject both of us could spend a lot of time talking about. We always need to run a whole session on that in terms of what you can do. And look, I'm definitely on the extroverted side. I'm not full-blown extrovert, outgoing. People that know me very well know I also like spending a lot of time by myself. But something that surprises people is that I do really struggle to film stuff that's not live. So some people are, so for me, actually, this is my place. I love being live. I find it much easier. It's more natural for me. Whereas you put a camera in front of me and get me to like record something, like the promo video for the accelerator was really tough. I had to do like 10 takes, right? It drove the video for crazy. But I was on a 60 Minutes article a number of years ago, and I had to look into the camera and say what my business was. It was like, I couldn't do it. It was really tough. So like, everyone's different. And part of it is you get better with time. And that's something I've got better at as well. As Kat said, you just get out there and you do it. And as Kat also said, this applies across business in general. Imperfect action, taking that action and going, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. I'm going to get better at it as I do it. And you improve, right? You improve every time you do stuff, as Kat said. So look, so powerful, this stuff as well. We've got a question there from Elizabeth Steinbeck. So Elizabeth, I'd love you to actually unmute yourself and ask it around some actions. So if you're there, Elizabeth, still, do you want to just unmute yourself? Yeah, there you go. Go for it.
Yeah, you were talking about making sure that we take action every day. And I was just curious, what are, your top 2 or 3 actions that you think we should be taking each day, or that you take each day?
Oh, I love this. Look, like anything, it depends where you are in business, of course, right? But still, there's some fundamentals things here. And I'm going to kind of go to a couple of answers that maybe you wouldn't think I would say. One of them is actually write down your goals every day. All right, not many people do this. Write down your goals every single day. 5 goals. It's something we do in the accelerators, get really clear on what people's goals are and help them develop that. But like, get those 5 goals and just write them down. And this is simple, the simplest thing you can do every day. Something you can also do is just make sure you're looking at those goals. So put them in places you're going to look. I say, you brush your teeth twice a day, look at your goals twice a day. Put your goals with your toothbrush. All right. So it's super simple because it helps you get really clear on what you're doing. And then you're taking action towards those goals. I even have like set up, I'm actually in a different office at the moment, but it's set up. I usually have my goals sitting right next to my laptop to remind me, and it keeps me on focus. Okay, so a simple action, and I love simple actions that you can do every day as well. The other thing that I'm going to mention is something called the mosquito hour, and people laugh at me when I share this one, but it is like one of the most powerful things I do. In business, you're going to have lots of little things that you need to do every day. And they're like mosquitoes. They're like, you've got to squish them. They take like 5 minutes to do, right? Oh, you've got to do this invoice. Oh, you've got to upload this image to this thing. Oh, you've got to change this thing. You need to take these actions every day. And like, this is kind of, I'm saying, hey, one action is do the mosquito hour spend half an hour taking in as many of these actions as you can. And I actually write them all down. I've got on my list, I have a list of mosquitoes. And every day I set aside an hour and I try and get at least 10 of those things done, cross them off. Okay, the mosquito out, something that I talk about in my productivity sessions as well. We have a bit of a laugh about it, but it's about these annoying little things you've got to squish, these little mosquitoes as well. But look, if you don't have an hour every day, what about 20 minutes? Okay, if you've got family that you're caring for, you might just be able to grab 15 minutes here and there, taking those small actions. And that makes you feel like an action taker. So actually, these are things that I do right at the start of the day, writing the goals down. And also that second one is the mosquito hour. Okay, because then after that, I feel like I can achieve anything. I feel like I can do anything. I'm an action taker, I can achieve things. And it helps drive you into other things as well. So kind of probably a slightly different answer, because it's not so much in like, here's what you do in your business realm. So I'll just throw one more, which is more like around that. It's marketing. What can you do each and every single day to further your marketing? It's like, absolutely, you've got to put time and energy into the creative side of what you're doing. But every day you need to take some form of action around marketing. Maybe it takes 10 minutes, maybe it takes an hour. Whatever it is, use the time that you have available to move forward your marketing. Maybe it is just doing an Instagram post. Maybe it is sending out an email. Maybe it is contacting someone, updating other social media, updating your website. Important you do that consistently every single day. Awesome. Over to you, Kat. Thanks for that question. That was great.
Oh, I love that question. Actually, I want to piggyback on that and say one more thing. This isn't like a day-to-day business task to do every single day, but it's something that's really helped me personally grow. And that's networking with other creatives who are doing what I want to be doing. So I do this in a few different ways. Every once in a while, everybody has those Instagram friends that you guys follow each other and you comment on each other's, posts or artwork, but you've never actually talked face to face. So during COVID, like most people, I was craving social interactions. And so I started reaching out to a few of those people and just being like, hey, we've been Instagram friends for like 3 years now. Do you want to hop on a Zoom call this week and just kind of chat about what we're up to? And every time I've done that, it's been a resounding yes. And I wind up getting some amazing ideas for my business. It's a really cool opportunity just to network one-on-one with another creative. And another thing I did recently was I did the same thing with Skillshare. So I found a few other top teachers on Skillshare that are doing some really cool things. And I sent them all an email and I was like, hey, I'm putting together a mastermind for just, some really cool Skillshare top teachers. Do you want to join these calls? We'll do just 4 calls. It's low commitment, so 4 hours total. And every single one of them was like, yeah, let's do it. And so, it was a 4-week thing and I got some amazing ideas for my business. I just did this like 2 months ago. So I implemented all these things with my business that I learned, things that they're doing. And I'm like, oh man, that's a really good idea. And it can be big things like how to put together like an email newsletter campaign or what platform to work with, or it can just be little tiny things. And they can make a world of difference. So yeah, that was it for me, is just networking with other creatives, talking to other creatives. If you can do in-person stuff, if you can't do in-person stuff because of COVID, it's not the end of the world. That's what Zoom is for. So yeah. Okay. I see a question from Julie Futuran Olsted. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Do you want to hop in and ask it, or do you want me to read it? I'm kind of putting you on the spot there.
Feel free to just unmute yourself if you do want to. We'll see if we can find you.
Hi, I can hear you. Let's see, let me get my video going here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'm just actually watercoloring while I'm listening. But let's see, I'm really new to licensing and all of this, so this might be a super newbie question, but I'm looking at, ultimately I would like to have my own business, but I'm starting off by doing Spoonflower and maybe doing some print on demand. And I'm wondering if I should be holding back on any of my designs that I want to license in the future from, putting on Spoonflower or print on demand, or if that's something that's typical that, I can go ahead and upload them now on Spoonflower and plan on licensing them later. Is that recommended, basically?
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And I actually had the exact same reservation when I was getting started too. I was like, oh, this seems like a really cool design. I don't know if I should upload it now or save it for something good. But my advice is to put it out there on print on demand sites, because you can always remove that later, right? And I've definitely had to do that with some of the pieces that I then signed exclusive contracts with later. But the way they found that artwork to begin with wasn't because they went to my website and looked at my personal portfolio. It's because they found my stuff out there on, in my case, it was Society 6. For yours, it could be Spoonflower. So kind of think of that as your portfolio to some people. And the other cool thing about print on demand sites, when you upload your work there, is they have really good SEO, which is search engine optimization. So if you use a lot of keywords in the artwork and designs that you're uploading, like I'll, tag stuff as like mid-century modern, coral, rainbow, any keywords that people are searching, it's going to have a much higher ranking. And not only on that exact platform, like not only just on Society 6 with their search function, but also on Google Images. So a lot of people find my stuff because they type in, I don't know, alpaca art print watercolor, and it pops up on Google Images and leads someone directly to Society 6. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that and let them do all the hard SEO work for you. And you just put your designs up there, put a bunch of keywords, and you can always remove stuff later on. So again, I like the shotgun approach of just, blasting out my artwork to as many different channels as I possibly can and then seeing what sticks.
Okay, thank you. That's great to know.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Fantastic question. So I might go over to you now, Wendy. So you've got a question there, maybe the one around paid advertising. So you mentioned something around that. What were you wanting to know around paid advertising? You can unmute yourself if you like.
Yeah, so I was wondering, Kat, you probably do more social media promoting of your artwork. Do you use paid advertising to promote like a target audience and location, age group, things like that? Do you spend advertising dollars doing that?
That's a great question. So I've built up everything organically, which means without paid ads. And I actually ran my first paid ad 2 weeks ago. And it's when Logan and I were, we put together a video for our French retreat. And I was like, you know what? I was just kind of hanging out on the couch and I'm like, I want to see what happens if I boost this. So I think I put like $15 in and I boosted it, and it did okay, but I'm also not a Facebook ads expert. So it's not really something I'm that familiar with. But if I wanted to do a whole Facebook ads campaign, it was basically $15 of just kind of like, let's throw it at the wall and see what happens. But if I were to do it again or want to be more serious about it, I would definitely want to learn a lot more about Facebook ads myself, or hire somebody maybe off Upwork or something that is an expert in Facebook ads and could handle that part of my business for me.
Okay. I love that. I might just add a couple of things to that as well. It's super interesting seeing that people have this view that if they basically put money into social media, that it's just going to give them all of this reach and all that, basically get that return, which yes, it can, but if you're not creating good content in the first place, it doesn't matter. You can't boost content that isn't that great. So actually often what you've got to do is, I say, make sure you're doing the free stuff well first. All right, so if you are planning to put some money into stuff, make sure that in the first place, you're getting engagement. Okay, so if you're getting engagement on a post and then you boost it, for example, you're going to get way more out of it. Okay, whereas otherwise, if you are finding, oh, this post isn't getting any engagement at all, no one's really engaging with it, oh, I'll put some money into it. Yes, it's going to increase, but it's not going to increase that much because it wasn't that engaging in the first place. So really encourage you, if you are thinking about spending money, in addition to what Kat said around learning more or outsourcing, also just make sure that you're focusing on creating good content in the first place. Okay, and that you're doing the free stuff right. Okay, so you're really leveraging that. You're not just kind of going, okay, cool, I'm just going to make this work by paying money, because yes, you might get some more engagement, but really it's often a bit of a waste of money around that as well. Cool, awesome. So just keeping an eye on the time here. I know some of you may need to run away. I think we'll probably stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes answering questions. Are you good with that, Kat? Yep, cool. So look, we totally understand if you need to leave now because you've got other commitments, but feel free to stick around. We'll keep going through some more of these questions as well. Feel free to fire some more questions in the chat as well as we go through. But it's been fantastic having you all here as well. And Kat's going to go do the next question. But just before that, I will just share a couple more of the links that we've mentioned on. One of them is about the accelerator itself, and the other one about the France retreat. So obviously, if you have any questions or things, fire through. Really encourage you to check them out, because these are really an opportunity to take business forward and invest yourself in business to actually go to those dreams that you have, those that you've been thinking about forever, and wanting to actually seeing some real support around that as well. All right, so Kat, over to you for a few more questions.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, if Meryl is still on, Meryl Pardoin, if I get that right, she asked a question about hiring an attorney for contract review. Meryl, do you want to ask that question? All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and ask it for. Okay, so she asked, for art licensing, do you use a lawyer for every single contract, and how do you decide how much to charge for an advance and royalties? So I used to use a lawyer for all my contracts, but then we broke up, so now I don't anymore. But basically, my advice for you is, if you're kind of struggling with how much to charge for rates and what you should be asking for in terms of royalties in advance, and you're really coming out of nowhere and you're not sure what to charge, you can always ask them what their rate is first. So I do this with print on demand. It's obviously a little bit different because you're working with a platform, you're not working with an individual. But anytime that I've been approached to create custom work or sell through a specific company and someone's reaching out to me about that, I always ask them first, like, okay, great, well, what are your rates, or what's your budget for this project? And that's always worked to my advantage. And if it's something that's just so abysmally low, I'll be like, oh, actually my rates are, around 7 to 15%. Or if they say they come back at me and they're like, okay, we can offer you 15% royalties. I'll be like, great, my rates are actually like 17 to 20%. So always ask for a little bit higher than what they're offering, and then hopefully you guys can reach some sort of middle ground. So I actually did this last year. It was a company that wanted me to create some social media images for them. And I had never done anything like this before. It was custom artwork. It wasn't licensing. Like, I know licensing and I know licensing rates, which for print on demand, 10% is pretty industry average, by the way. If you're selling in store, sometimes it can go as like 2.5%, but you can also get up to maybe 7%. So just know that there's different royalty rates for different types of licensing. But anyway, this company reached out to me to ask about creating custom social media images that they could use on their company page. And it was a pretty big brand. And I had no idea what to charge, because I couldn't just be like, oh, give me 10% royalties, because they weren't earning money off of it. It was for a campaign. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe I charge like $250 or maybe even like $500 per design. And they wanted 10 images. So I decided, like, instead of just throwing out a number, I was like, okay, great. Here's my timeline. I'd love to know your budget for this project. And they came back at me and they're like, okay, our budget is $20,000. And I was like, oh, well, that's great, because my fee is also, it's around $21,528. And so it completely came out of left field. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I was just like, okay, great, we run with it, because it was a big company. It wasn't like I'm working one-on-one with someone where it's there for money. It's a budget for marketing, and they have this budget to spend. So in that situation, I was like, man, thank God I asked first, because I was about to massively lowball myself on this project. And that one totally paid off. So don't be afraid of asking for their rates first, and then you can kind of judge what your comeback is going to be based off of the rates they give you.
Oh, I love that. There's always so many stories. I know in the pricing week, it's always amazing that of the accelerator. It's always amazing the stories that come out and what people have done. And like something we often talk about is like, if you double your price of what you're doing, you might lose half your customers. But then it's like, wait a minute, you're doing half the work. All right, so there's so many gold gems within that, and I know Kat and I have had some great pricing discussions. I remember I was visiting Kat in Kansas City, I think probably 2 years ago now, Kat, and we were sitting there, and you were working on, it was a mural design, and I remember they came back and they really wanted to extend, right? They wanted to make it a lot bigger, and I remember we were sitting there going like, oh, how much? What do we think? And we kind of did the same thing again. You were like, well, why don't we try this? And we were both going like, oh, that kind of feels almost too high, but hey, it's negotiable, right? They're not going to turn around and say, hey, we hate you and how dare you and we don't want to work with you ever again. They're going to come back and go like, hey, actually, here's our budget. Can we negotiate on that? And actually, I think from memory, they came back and went, yeah, that's great. And we both went, oh, okay, that's very interesting. So pricing's such a fascinating subject as well. Cool. So look, I've got a question here around when you're starting out, what is the biggest obstacle and how do you overcome it from Erin? Okay. And look, I think, there is a lot of obstacles when you're starting out, but the first thing I've got to say is that the obstacles don't go away. They just get bigger, right? So, I kind of think we imagine early on in business, we're like, oh yeah, cool, it's going to get easier, right? And it's like, no, the problems actually get bigger. They get bigger obstacles. However, you get better at getting through obstacles. Okay, that's something that you get better at, and you're always gaining those skills as you grow your business. So when you see that obstacle, you're like, oh, here's another obstacle. Bring it on. Am I going over? Am I going under? Am I going around this one? Or am I going to go straight through? So actually, it is a bit of fun when I talk about this idea, but it's so true, is that obstacles always exist all the way through in business. And a big thing that you want to craft is really how to get the energy and go, have this mindset of going like, cool, I'm going to bust through that. I'm going to move forward. So going back to the original question, like what was an obstacle that was really hard for me when I was starting out? And I think a big one was around the transition. And this is something I work with a lot of one-on-one clients and even the accelerator around, is it's a transition from something to something. So for me, I was studying full-time when I started my first business. I was doing my master's of entrepreneurship at the time and starting a business. And then I had to transition from that to running the business full time. And other people, it's a day job or a part-time job, or they've had time off for family, or it's study, or whatever it is. Often there's this transition happening. And I'm sure some of you can relate to this and going, yeah, I'm in this transition stage, or I want to have a transition. And I think that's the hardest part, is like, how do you get through the transition? Because there's so many unknowns as well. And look, what I often say around this, kind of a couple of tips, is one of them is that you do need to have a plan ready as you move towards that. And you need to be hitting those goals that you're aiming for. So for example, if it's leaving your day job, you might say, okay, cool. First of all, set a date. All right, because people all the time seem to say to me, oh, I'm going to leave within like 2 to 3 years. And I'm like, well, that's a really hard date to plan for, because it's too far ahead in the future. Whereas what it would look like leaving in a year, set that date, and then work out what do you need to do between now and that date to make that possible. And it might be, I need to earn X revenue. I need to do these things here. I need to look into set this thing up around the business itself, or maybe it's I need to look into how the tax stuff works. I need to upgrade those business skills. All right, so there, you can actually set those things and make a plan around how you do that. And then as you get closer to that date, you can actually go, okay, cool, am I ready? And I was working with a client quite recently who they moved their date out. They went, cool, I'm going to move it from here to here. And I didn't feel like they were just like pushing out forever and ever. I think I would have probably pushed back more if they were like again. But actually they went, I haven't quite hit the goals I want to hit. So actually I'm going to leave my day job. It's going to be another month. And that worked really well, because it meant they could actually hit those clear goals that they had set. Okay, so as I said, big obstacle for me was transitioning from university to running this business full time. So I knew I had to be hitting X income, because I had some support and was living pretty cheap as a student, but then my costs were going to go up. So I knew that we had to hit revenue points. I knew that I needed to train and upskill in some areas of business. I knew that I needed to trial and test some new ideas, products, services within what we were doing as well. So that gives you a bit of an idea around some of the ways to think about that transition there as well. Awesome, Kat.
Cool, that was a great answer. Okay, Nina had a question. Nina, if you want to unmute, otherwise I can say it. I think your last name is iPad.
Cool, yeah, she's just unmuting, I think, there. And there's probably an unmute button.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go, Nina, go for it.
I couldn't figure out how to change the name. I'm Nina Hay Creative. But you kind of answered a little bit earlier, but it's how to transition from a print-on-demand site to approaching companies and businesses. Were there steps that you took? Was it signing with an agency? Was it them finding you?
That's a fantastic question. And I think a lot of people here probably resonate with that as well. So yes, I first tried cold calling. So I signed up for LinkedIn Premium, and I reached out to buyers for stores like Target and Nordstrom and Anthropologie at stores I wanted to get involved with. And I didn't have a lot of success with that because I didn't have a strong call to action. It wasn't like, hey, for more information, go to this, landing page on my website that tells you more, email me. It was just like, hey, and this was very early on. So I failed with that, maybe because I didn't have the right resources or connections, but also because I didn't have a good ask. Like it wasn't going anywhere. So instead, what's worked out really, really well for me is just being as available as possible. And what I mean by that is if someone goes to my Society6 page or goes to my Instagram, they're going to see exactly what my brand name is, what my name is, my email, and my website. And so you can't not contact me. It makes it really, really easy. And then another way that's kind of worked out for me in my advantage was working, and I touched on this earlier, like you mentioned, but by working with these big print-on-demand companies like Society6, some people don't know this, but Society6 actually feeds into a company called Deny Designs. And what Deny does really well is facilitate these in-store partnerships. And they find artwork that they want to license through Nordstrom or Target by scouring through Society6 and inviting people to join their Deny platform and put this artwork up for art licensing there instead. So a lot of the Targets, actually that's how I initially got involved with Target, was because I had some stuff on my Society6 page that their parent company, Deny Designs, liked and wanted to put into Target. So even if you're thinking like, oh, I'm just working with a print-on-demand company, it's not going to go anywhere, know that a lot of buyers, whether it's through their parent company or just completely other companies, they'll scour through big print-on-demand companies like Society6 because it is a marketplace for artwork that is actively being sold, and they'll reach out directly to people from time to time. So that's honestly, that's my best advice, is just being as available as possible and having your stuff out there in as many different places as you can find time to do. Like I know uploading to Society6 and other print-on-demands, I know it takes a lot of time. I usually just batch upload everything on Sundays when I'm just hanging out and watching Netflix, and then I'll, hit publish throughout the week. But yeah, I think putting yourself out there through marketing efforts, like Logan mentioned, through any place where your buyers might be, as long as your artwork is somewhere where they can see it, it can really, really help your chances.
I love that, Kat. So what we're going to do, team, is we're probably just going to answer a couple more questions, and then we will wrap things up. Thank you so much for sticking around. It's always great to see everyone's engagement as well. And I had a look through the video earlier on, and everyone's like writing notes furiously, which is fantastic. Kat and I so love to be able to share our knowledge and expertise around these things, and have a bit of fun along the way as well. So it's been really great seeing everyone's engagement too. So this last question I'm going to answer here is around how does a starving artist thrive in a competitive environment? And I'm like, boy, this is an amazing question. I absolutely love that one. So thank you, Wendy, for asking that one in advance. So look, lots of answers to this one. But really, what I want you to think about is the world is full of abundance. All right, there is huge possibility these days because of online. Okay, so it's very easy, particularly if you think about a lot of maybe your Instagram followers or people around you, that you might say, oh my God, I see and I know so many people who are doing like really similar stuff. I see their quality and I find it overwhelming. I feel like maybe I'm not quite good enough, or is it too competitive? And it's going, well, yes, there's a lot of people doing these things out there, but there's so much opportunity, right? There's so many possibilities. The markets that we're working with are humongous. They actually, our minds struggle to understand the size of some of these audiences that we have access to now. Obviously, part of that is it's the power of online. So that's why, we're really encouraging you to think about what you can do in the online space, whether it's teaching online, whether it's offering online products, print on demand, licensing, all these different possibilities. But the numbers involved of how many potential customers are out there are mind-boggling, and we can't really get our head around that. So yes, it's important to understand what else is out there, who are your competitors, but also it's really important you focus in on doing the best work possible and marketing and promoting yourself, because actually there's huge opportunities out there and you can achieve way more than you possibly can believe around that. There's people who have become mega successful in all types of businesses, including across everything that you're all doing. All sorts of possibility there. So look, this idea of the starving artist, and how do we, competitive environments and things like that, is I'm going, hey, remember that the markets are huge. Yes, you've got to figure out how do you access that market? How do you connect with people? What is your niche? These are all good things to think about. But just remember that there is so much abundance out there in terms of possibility for you and your business. You've just got to take those actions to move forward. Awesome. Cool. Kat.
Oh, Logan, that's so inspirational. Okay, so I'm going to choose one last question. I'm going to go with Kenzie's. And she asked, before you're adding a design to a print-on-demand platform, are you checking to make sure that you haven't accidentally created a similar design to someone else? Like if I accidentally been a little bit too inspired by somebody else. And then she says, for example, if it's a popular trend, how do you be careful not to come across as unintentionally copying somebody else's idea? So yeah, that's a really good question. And it is something that I've absolutely encountered. So I did this hand lettering lockup a few years ago, and I put it on Society6 and Redbubble. And then it was like a few days later, I was on Pinterest, and I use Pinterest to it's kind of a mood board for me. So I find inspiration, and I had just pinned to my own inspirational lettering board the exact same type lockup that somebody else did. And it looked so strikingly similar. It was just really simple cursive. And I totally freaked out. I didn't mean to do it. I just got overly inspired, and then it kind of lodged in my brain. And then I just hand created it and put it for sale. And luckily I caught it in time, and I caught it before any products were sold, before it really built up too much traction. And that can totally happen. And it's just something to be aware of. And as I've gotten more comfortable in my own style, that doesn't really happen anymore. I've gotten to a point now where I've found my artistic voice. And so what I'm creating now, it's coming from this predefined style that I've kind of, evolved into over the past few years. So the chances of that happening now are so slim, versus when I was just getting started, I was trying a lot of different things out and doing a lot of exploring, which I encourage everyone to do. But yeah, that can happen from time to time, and just be really careful there, because the last thing you want is to be hit with a cease and desist, or God forbid, a lawsuit or anything like that. But on the other side of that, there's a really big benefit in finding trends and then incorporating them into your own artwork. So back in 2013, 2014, a really popular trend you saw with art was watercolor flowers with some sort of inspirational cursive quote in the middle. So I did a lot of those early on because they were selling really, really, really well. And the reason I was creating so many of those was because I'd already built up this momentum. People were buying them. So I was just creating as many different iterations, different quotes, different types of flowers as I possibly could, because I saw the momentum there. And so the way that I do that now is I look at where my customers are shopping, and I use that as a source of inspiration. So for my brand, it's the same types of people that purchase my artwork probably would want to buy the same types of products that might be sold in Anthropologie or Target or Urban Outfitters. And so what I do is I look at those websites, and sometimes I sort by new, or I look at their lookbooks and I look for commonalities. So for example, with Anthropologie, they were publishing a lot of animal print on their apparel a few years ago. So I was like, okay, Anthropologie is super into animal print. I'm going to create a bunch of animal print designs. And of course, my version of animal print is completely different from their, velvet couch with leopard print on it. But I'm using that same motif as an inspiration. And that one totally paid off. I created a bunch of jungle cats and zebra print and everything in my own personal artistic style. So, and it was such a like a broad trend as well. Like everyone can do animal print in their own way. So it's not like, oh, animal print, that's Anthropologie. No one would ever say that because it's an iconic trend. So that's something I still do. Like right now you're seeing a lot of retro inspired designs. So you're seeing things that are evocative of the 60s, 70s, those kind of warm jewel toned color palettes, peace signs, that kind of groovy typography that looks like it belongs on band posters for, psychedelic concerts in the 60s. That kind of stuff you're noticing a lot of right now, and it's really popping up. And so I see that on ModCloth, I see that in Target, I see it in Anthropologie. And so I can take that same idea of, okay, 60s is majorly on trend, and I could pull any sort of iconography that was very popular in the 60s and repurpose that with my own art style. So one of the things it's now sold through Urban Outfitters, it's this sunshine I did on my iPad, and it seems super retro. It's got all those color palettes in there, and that one's doing really, really well. And so as soon as that got picked up by Urban Outfitters, I was like, okay, I need to create an entire collection that has the same kind of look and feel, because I need to roll with that momentum and maximize it as much as I can. So I created like a moon in the same color palette, and then some kind of abstract, kind of swirly textures. And so those, I think I created 4 designs in total. So now they can all belong together. And so the other 3 are kind of piggybacking off of the success of that one piece. And so it's just a great way to, again, follow trends and then chase that momentum at the same time.
I love that. Fantastic, Kat. So, hey, it's great seeing everyone sort of posting things in the chat as well, which is great. So just final comments, feel free to put them in there because we'll finish up in the next minute or so. Also, you can put your Instagram tags in there. So I know a few people are doing that, which is great. And we love to be able to follow you if we're already not, and others want to actually connect with you as well within that too. So look, it's been an absolute blast connecting with you all, hearing your questions, and also just having that chat so interactive has been really cool. Look, we love being able to actually share these different ideas and expertise from our own experiences over the years as well, and obviously encourage you to check out the Accelerator. It's something that both Kat and I are very passionate about, is the learning experience for helping creatives take the next steps through those transitions, chasing those dreams and those amazing ideas to become successful in something that you really love and enjoy. We think that is the definition of success as well. So thank you, everyone. So we'll wrap up soon. So any final words from you, Kat?
Oh man, this was such a fun call. It's really nice to get to interact face to face. I mean, I teach online classes, which means I teach to a camera. So it's really nice to have these calls where I can actually see the face to face, interact with people, hear your questions. Thank you everybody for joining. This was really great.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you everyone. So it's been great having you here. We'll say goodbye. Take care and have a lovely morning, day, evening. Some of you get to finally go to bed. We really appreciate you all jumping on board. So awesome. Take care, everyone. See you.
Thanks, guys. Good to see everybody.
See you later.